Now, as I mentioned at the start of the show, the Albanese government is holding an inquiry into right-wing extremism, but they're deliberately excluding Islamic or religiously motivated extremism. Liberal Senator James McGrath tried to expand the terms of reference of the inquiry to include all forms of extremism, but Labor and the Greens voted down his amendment, and he joins me now. Senator James McGrath, welcome. Look, tell us what happened behind the scenes when you tried to get Labor and Greens on board with expanding the Senate inquiry, not just to focus on right-wing extremism.
It was very disappointing, the attitude taken by the Labor Party, the Greens political party, and also Senator David Pocock. To them, it seemed to a bit of a game that they were doing this inquiry to look into right-wing extremism because they were playing party politics. And the view of the coalition and some of the other crossbench was, no, extremism, especially violent extremism, shouldn't sit on any political radar. Violence is violence, and therefore, whether it's left or right, it is something that the Senate should be looking into, along with religious motivated extremism. But what is particularly disappointed is the Greens. They were laughing, they were cheering, they were so happy that this inquiry got up into right-wing extremism at the expense of a broader inquiry. And that says all you need to know about the motivation.
They were laughing, Senator.
They were laughing.
Why?
They were laughing.
What's there to laugh about? That blows my mind.
Because to the Greens political party, this is a game. To the Greens political party, it is all about them versus us. Whereas the rest of us, your viewers, the people who live here in Queensland, we don't like any form of violence or any form of extremism. But to the Greens, and remember, we've got people like Senator Faruqi, we all know about her deleted tweet, in terms of their approach to other certain groups in Australia today.
Yeah, and I showed that Instagram post on air earlier. But so there was no formal reason or justification that Labor gave you for wanting to exclude Islamic extremism and terrorism from this inquiry?
They gave no reason as to why the inquiry should be expanded to include all forms of violent extremism or religious motivated extremism. And what is particularly disappointing is that this motion was after the October 7 massacre, a massacre that saw over 1,200 Israelis and people from Thailand and the Philippines murdered by terrorists. We saw rising anti-Semitism in Australia. And yet the Labor Party, for whatever motivation, and you touched upon it earlier, for whatever motivation, decided not to expand this inquiry. Now, my view is it is the role of the Senate, a Senate elected by the people of Australia, to inquire into such matters and to not look at it through the lens of party politics, but to look at such matters as to what's in the best interest of Australia and Australians to keep us all safe.
Exactly, and you'd think the issue of keeping Australians safe would be beyond party politics. Now, this amendment you tried to move in December last year, so it was before the recent attacks that we've seen. But as you say, it was after anti-Semitism had already exploded, after we'd already seen hate preachers, in my view, inciting violence, although there's been no action taken against them. You know, we've heard from ASIO in recent times that what they call religiously motivated extremism, so that's Islamic extremism, they've just renamed it, is the top domestic terror threat. So do you think it's worth, again, trying to move this motion, trying to make this amendment, or is it just too late in the process, seeing as the Senate inquiry is already receiving submissions?
It is something that I will progress with my coalition colleagues and the Senate. We return next week because it is something that I believe that this particular Senate committee, the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee, could still look into in terms of making that amendment. Because we live in a society at the moment, and Julie and Lisa touched upon it at the moment, where Jewish Australians are scared. So it's not a case of rising anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has risen. Jewish students at the University of Queensland are afraid to walk across the campus by themselves because of the threats that are posed to them by others at that university. This
but these
should
threats
not
are,
be happening in a first world country.
But these threats are to all Australians, you know, what we've seen in the past few weeks.